Right now, as you're watching this, the ground beneath 5 million people across Southeast Asia,
dozens of people have died, more than 200,000 homes flooded,
is still saturated with floodwater. The rain has stopped. The cyclones have passed. But the dying hasn't. Over 1,600 people are confirmed dead, with hundreds more missing, swept away by what scientists are calling the most catastrophic convergence of weather systems in modern history. Two rare tropical cyclones, one forming in waters where cyclones almost never exist, combined with supercharged monsoon rains to unleash a climate disaster.
I don't know what they're going to find, but it's not going to be the same life that they left.
That's rewriting the rules of what's possible. In late November 2025, nature unleashed hell across Southeast Asia. Not one, but two unprecedented cyclones struck within days of each other, turning 4 countries into a disaster zone that experts are still struggling to comprehend. Cyclone Ditwah slammed into Sri Lanka's eastern coast on November 27th, while Cyclone Senyar,
it is only the second cyclone ever observed in the Malacca Strait.
only the second tropical cyclone ever documented in the Malacca Strait, tore through Thailand, Malaysia, and beyond. But here's what makes this terrifying. These weren't just powerful storms. They were atmospheric rivers loaded with moisture from warming oceans, carrying more water than the region had seen in centuries. Hat Yai, Thailand, recorded 335 millimeters of rainfall. That's over 13 inches in a single day. To put that in perspective, that's the heaviest daily rainfall total in 300 years of record keeping. Not decades, centuries. The city became a lake overnight, with cars almost completely submerged and emergency responders.
Emergency crews are using boats to move residents and tourists through submerged streets and deliver medical supplies, drinking water and food.
Using fishing boats to navigate streets that had been busy intersections just hours before.
And boats have been deployed, although officials warned that damaged infrastructure and worsening weather.
One survivor posted on social media, "Water came so fast we climbed to the roof with kids." Waited 6 hours for rescue, still shaking. Sri Lanka's government declared this their worst natural disaster. Over 1.5 million people were affected, with 218,526 people from 61,612 families forced into 1,564 government-run emergency shelters. The president called it the largest and most challenging natural disaster in our history. But even those numbers don't capture the speed of destruction. Water that climbed the stairs faster than we could run, according to one evacuee. What happened beneath those swirling clouds was a perfect storm of atmospheric physics gone haywire. Cyclone Senyar formed in the Malacca Strait, a narrow body of water where tropical cyclones simply don't occur. The last time a cyclone formed there was 2001, and meteorologists thought it was a freak occurrence. They were wrong. Senyar intensified to winds of 43 knots. That's 80 kilometers per hour, or nearly 50 miles per hour, while sitting in waters that should have been too confined to fuel such a system. But wind wasn't the killer. Water was. As climate scientist Roxy Cole explained, water, not wind, is now the main driver of disaster.
What we can say without a specific attribution study, though, is that a warmer atmosphere holds more moisture, is about 7% more moisture per degree of warming, and a warmer, wetter atmosphere has more potential energy available for storms as well.
And these storms were atmospheric vacuum cleaners, sucking moisture from seas that are warming twice as fast as the global average.
West Sumatra battled to clear roads blocked by mud and debris, while improving weather revealed the scale of disaster, with some residents trying to salvage valuable items like documents and motorcycles from their damaged homes.
When Senyar made its first landfall near northeastern Sumatra,
in Indonesia's North Sumatra province, dozens have died, thousands more displaced.
Around midnight on November 25th, 26, it was carrying unprecedented volumes of water. The storm crossed the Malay Peninsula, made a second landfall in Selangor, Malaysia, then re-emerged over the South China Sea on November 28th, dumping catastrophic amounts of rain at every step. Meanwhile, Ditwah was following its own path of destruction. moving down Sri Lanka's east coast before curving back into the Bay of Bengal like a boomerang of devastation. The pressure systems created what meteorologists call training, storms following the same path like cars on a highway, each one dumping more water on already saturated ground. La Niña conditions intensified the northeast monsoon, while sea surface temperatures above average supercharged every storm cell. This wasn't weather. This was a climate system pushed beyond its limits, releasing energy that had been building for months. Behind every statistic is a human face, a family torn apart, a life cut short. Over 1,600 people died across the region. Mothers, fathers, children, grandparents, many of them drowned in their sleep as floodwaters rose faster than anyone thought possible. In Thailand alone, 3.6 million people were affected across 20 provinces. That's roughly the population of Los Angeles, suddenly homeless, hungry, and desperate. Sri Lankan survivor Priya Kumari from Batticaloa described the moment her world ended. The reservoir burst and water came like a wall. We ran for our lives. She was one of the lucky ones. Across Sri Lanka, between 482 and 607 people didn't make it out alive, with up to 345 still missing. Bodies swept away by currents so powerful that survivors described them as capable of killing an elephant. In Vietnam, over 2,500 homes were flooded, leaving hundreds of thousands of people with nothing. One evacuee living in a school shelter said simply, "Our house is gone. We're living in a school now. No idea what's next." That's the reality for millions across the region. People went to bed in their own homes and woke up as climate refugees. Malaysia saw 37,000 people evacuated, while Indonesian death tolls exceeded 830 people. These aren't numbers on a spreadsheet. These are families destroyed, communities erased, futures stolen by water that rose meters in a few hours, forcing midnight evacuations with no time to grab more than the clothes on their backs. The experts study these disasters for a living are choosing their words carefully, but their concern is unmistakable.
Group says that the extreme summer in South Asia is just a trailer for what is yet to come.
The World Weather Attribution Group stated bluntly, climate change has increased the likelihood and intensity of heavy rainfall events in the region. When scientists use words like increased likelihood, they mean the dice are loaded, and they're loaded against us. Secretary General Celeste Saulo didn't mince words. Record-breaking rainfall, storm surges, and floods displace millions and cause billions of dollars in economic losses. Dr. Ananda Malawatantri, a climate scientist studying the region, warned, climate change is intensifying these cyclones. We must prepare for more frequent disasters. The word prepare carries weight when it comes from someone who has spent their career studying atmospheric physics. These scientists don't make predictions lightly.
The devastation in these Southeast Asia countries follows months of adverse and deadly weather, including typhoons that have lashed the Philippines and Vietnam and caused frequent and prolonged flooding elsewhere. Scientists have warned that extreme weather events will become more frequent as a result of global warming.
They're based on decades of data showing that South and Southeast Asia are warming nearly twice as fast as the global average. 3 weeks before the peak flooding, meteorologists detected unusual low-pressure development in the Malacca Strait. 2 weeks later, that system had organized into what would become Cyclone Senyar. 1 week before landfall, rainfall totals began spiking across the region. Then came the cascade. On November 21st, Hat Yai recorded its record-breaking rainfall before Senyar's center even arrived. By November 25th, Senyar was making its first landfall while Ditwah was already battering Sri Lanka's coast. November 27th brought peak destruction as both systems reached maximum intensity simultaneously. Within 72 hours, the entire region was in crisis. The speed of deterioration caught even experts off guard. Royal Thai Navy officers reported working 24/7, but some areas are still unreachable. Emergency responders described racing against time as floodwaters continued rising even after the storms passed. In some areas, water levels didn't peak until days after the cyclones moved on. As runoff from mountain slopes continued feeding already overwhelmed river systems, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto's cautious statement, The worst has passed, hopefully, reveals how unprecedented the situation became. When world leaders are hoping rather than stating with confidence, you know the system has been pushed beyond all previous experience. The region has seen devastating floods before, but nothing quite like this convergence of catastrophes. Sri Lanka's government explicitly compared this to their worst natural disaster, the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami that killed over 35,000 people across the island nation. For Indonesia, this was their deadliest natural disaster since the 2018 Sulawesi earthquake. Thailand's southern flooding echoed the devastating 2011 floods that killed over 800 and caused $46 billion in damages. But there's a crucial difference. Those past disasters were singular events. One tsunami, one earthquake, one flood season. This time, multiple unprecedented weather systems converged simultaneously across international borders. As a nature commentary noted, a region unused to tropical cyclones has had 3 in a week. The world needs to ask why this happened, not look away. Right now, the immediate crisis has passed, but the threat level remains dangerously elevated. La Niña conditions are expected to persist into 2026, maintaining the atmospheric patterns that fueled this disaster. The northeast monsoon continues, and authorities are warning of additional tropical depressions potentially hitting central Vietnam. Emergency shelters across the region are still packed beyond capacity. In Sri Lanka alone, over 218,000 people remain displaced, living in temporary facilities with limited access to clean water and medical care. The Jakarta Post reported, suffering through days without clean water or proper medical care, evacuees packed into emergency shelters are falling severely ill, with some reportedly dying before help can reach them. Infrastructure remains fragile. In Sri Lanka, 247 kilometers, that's 153 miles, of major roads were damaged, along with 35 bridges destroyed. In Indonesia, 46,000 homes were damaged in Aceh province alone. Malaysia declared 500 kilometers of roads impassable in Kelantan. These aren't just inconveniences, they're lifelines cut, leaving communities vulnerable if another storm hits. The economic damage exceeds $8 billion across the region. But that's just the beginning. Agricultural lands remain flooded, contaminated, and unusable. Tourism industries are devastated. Supply chains are broken. The question keeping emergency managers awake at night isn't if another disaster will strike. Warmer air carries more moisture, and La Niña patterns are becoming more intense. The atmospheric conditions that created this perfect storm aren't disappearing. They're becoming more common. Best case scenario, the remaining La Niña conditions weaken over the coming months, giving the region time to rebuild and strengthen defenses. Rivers return to normal levels, infrastructure gets repaired, and displaced populations return home. But even in this scenario, the damaged ecosystems and eroded land increase vulnerability to future events. Worst case scenario, additional tropical systems develop before communities can recover. Already saturated soils can't absorb more rainfall. Damaged infrastructure fails completely under new stress. The death toll climbs higher as rescue capacity becomes overwhelmed. Most likely scenario, a series of smaller but significant weather events continue testing the region's broken systems. Each storm causes more damage than it would have before, because the foundation for resilience has been swept away. Recovery becomes a race against the next disaster, with communities never quite catching up. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change projects increasing frequency and intensity of extreme rainfall events across Southeast Asia. This wasn't a once-in-a-century disaster. This was a preview. As of right now, the crisis isn't over. It's just paused. Weather monitoring stations across the region continue reporting anomalous readings. Soil moisture levels remain at dangerous saturation points. River systems that burst their banks are still running higher than normal, meaning any significant rainfall could trigger immediate flooding. The most disturbing aspect isn't what happened, but what it reveals about our future. The floods that devastated Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, the Philippines, and Thailand in late 2025 were not simply natural disasters. They were governance failures. Decades of inadequate planning, environmental destruction, and climate denial created a powder keg that nature finally lit. Emergency response systems that seemed adequate before November 2025 have been revealed as catastrophically insufficient. Early warning systems worked but couldn't prevent mass casualties. Evacuation plans existed but couldn't handle the scale of displacement. International aid arrived but not fast enough to prevent hundreds of deaths from lack of medical care. The survivors living in emergency shelters, the families still searching for missing relatives, the communities staring at empty lots where their homes once stood. They're all living proof that the climate crisis has moved beyond future projections into present reality. The floodwaters have receded, but the threat hasn't. 5 million people are trying to rebuild while scientists warn this is just the beginning. Stay alert, stay informed, and keep watching, because the next convergence of atmospheric rivers is already forming somewhere over warming oceans.
More ice can slide off the Antarctic continent into the ocean, and that also causes sea levels to rise.